Tom Silva's journey into the world of construction didn't begin under studio lights or in front of cheering fans. It started in the quiet corners of Lexington, Massachusetts, long before anyone would ever call him America's most trusted home improvement expert. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood filled with the scent of freshly cut wood and the echo of hammers, Tom was immersed in a world where building wasn't just a job. It was a way of life. His father, a skilled builder himself, didn't send young Tom to any fancy school to learn the trade. Instead, he handed him a tool belt and brought him along to job sites, teaching him not just the how of construction, but the why behind every cut and measurement. Why reinforce that beam? Why does this joint matter? Why spend time perfecting something no one will ever see? Those questions and their answers formed the blueprint for the craftsman Tom would eventually become. Growing up in Lexington, a town rich with colonial buildings and architectural history, Tom didn't just see houses. He saw stories hidden in every beam and brick. These weren't merely structures. They were pieces of history, lovingly built and meant to last. While many in the construction world begin their careers with textbooks or trade school lectures, Tom's real education came from working side by side with experienced tradesmen who had mastered their craft over a lifetime. It wasn't about passing exams. It was about passing down a legacy. And that legacy came not just in the form of tools, but in a mindset, one that prioritized quality over shortcuts and pride over profit. In time, Tom and his brother Richard channeled everything they had learned into something of their own. Silva Brothers Construction was born, a family-run business rooted in old-school values, but ready to take on any challenge. Whether it was a small renovation or a massive historical restoration, Tom approached every project with the same care he had developed as a boy. Word spread quickly throughout Massachusetts. If you wanted it done right, you called the Silvas. That hard-won reputation for top-tier craftsmanship eventually caught the attention of the producers at This Old House, a show already beloved by viewers eager to learn about home repairs and restoration. They needed someone who didn't just know the work, but truly lived it. Tom Silva was a perfect fit. Yet, the path to television was anything but straightforward. Back in the mid-1980s, Tom was simply going about his business as a hard-working contractor when his neighbor, a television producer named Russell Morrish, floated the idea of appearing on camera. Tom turned it down flat, saying he was simply too busy. He was running Silva Brothers Construction full-time and couldn't imagine juggling that alongside cameras and TV audiences. But Morrish saw something special, someone authentic, skilled, and deeply grounded in the craft. And he didn't give up. He had already seen Tom's work up close when Silva Brothers built the set for his PBS show, The Victory Garden, and he believed Tom's craftsmanship deserved a bigger stage. The real turning point came not from a formal audition or polished pitch meeting, but from Morrish unexpectedly showing up at one of Tom's job sites with a camera crew. Tom was setting up a room for another regular, Norm Abram, to shoot a kitchen segment. When Morrish walked in, clipped a microphone onto him, and just like that, Tom Silva was on camera. No script, no rehearsal, just him, his tools, and his knowledge. By 1986, Tom had joined the cast of This Old House as the show's general contractor, and 2 years later, Silva Brothers Construction became the program's official contracting firm. What began as an unexpected moment evolved into one of the most enduring relationships in television history. Over the years, Tom tackled renovation projects that most people wouldn't even dream of attempting. There was the 1887 Nantucket House, which began as a typical renovation but ended up requiring an almost complete rebuild. Then came a 1906 Arts and Crafts church, a literal church, that the team transformed into someone's home. One of the more jaw-dropping projects was a 1721 farmhouse that had tilted backward by 8 inches due to a rotted sill. And the Manchester-by-the-Sea project, which Tom himself described as way too big for the time allotted, was supposed to take 18 months but was completed in just 10. Each project spoke volumes about his work ethic and his ability to adapt under pressure. But beyond the bricks and beams, Tom became one of the show's most beloved educators, breaking down complex construction tasks into simple, understandable steps. He once said that if he hadn't become a contractor, he probably would have been a teacher, and through this old house. That's exactly what he became. However, behind the warm smiles and smooth project walkthroughs, a more complicated story was quietly unfolding. Now nearing his late 70s, Tom has finally opened up about the behind-the-scenes struggles that nearly cost him his role more than once. Back in the late 1980s and into the early 1990s, Silva found himself constantly butting heads with the show's producers. These weren't small disagreements over camera angles or scene composition. They were deep-rooted conflicts about the very soul of the program. Tom believed this old house should always put the craft first. Real materials, real tools, real problems, and real fixes. But when producers began squeezing construction timelines to keep up with filming demands, he felt it was like pretending the hardest parts of the work didn't matter. For someone who had spent his entire life doing things by the book, cutting corners, even for the camera, felt like a betrayal. Things grew so tense that Tom eventually reached a breaking point. He gave the producers a clear choice. Either allow him more control over how the construction was portrayed, or he would walk away. It wasn't a bluff. It was a man protecting his craft. Thankfully, the producers recognized just how valuable he was, not just for his skills, but for the trust he had built with fans across the country. They adjusted the process and gave him more input, and the show held onto one of its most genuine assets. But that wasn't the end of it. Fast forward to 2004, and Tom was once again staring down a crossroads. The mounting pressures drove him to begin writing a resignation letter. He talked it over with his family, weighed his options, and seriously considered stepping away for good. Producers caught wind of how serious he was and moved swiftly, offering him something even more valuable than reassurance: autonomy. They guaranteed that his work would not be tampered with for the sake of runtime, gave him more control on job sites, and promised to respect the technical standards he held so dear. The resignation letter was never sent, but its very existence spoke volumes about how close viewers came to losing the man who gave this old house its authenticity. Then came the 2010s. Television itself was changing. Streaming platforms were booming, audiences were shifting, and younger faces with snappier edits were becoming the new normal. Producers began floating the idea of reducing Tom's screen time to make room for younger experts they believed might resonate more with newer viewers. But Tom pushed back firmly, reminding everyone that the audience didn't tune in for flash. They tuned in for wisdom, for the years of hands-on experience that someone like him brought to the table. Fans, longtime viewers, and even some of the younger staff rallied behind him. The message was clear. Tom Silva wasn't just part of this old house. He was its foundation. Then, in 2018, a dark cloud settled over the tight-knit production crew. Austin Wilson, a young, bright-eyed crew member who had been personally mentored by Tom, passed away suddenly during a filming season. For Tom, this wasn't just a professional blow. It was deeply personal. Those close to him described how profoundly the tragedy shook him. He grew quieter during set meetings, pulled back from team conversations, and began questioning the very path he had walked for decades. For perhaps the first time, crew members who had worked with him for years saw him seriously consider walking away. Not because he no longer loved the work, but because something fundamental had changed inside him. In those long, quiet months following Austin's passing, Tom found support in unexpected places, particularly from Austin's own family. They told him that Austin had always spoken so highly of him, and how much he had looked up to Tom not just as a builder, but as a man. Slowly, bit by bit, Tom began piecing himself back together, just as he had done for so many broken walls and neglected porches. In an early 2025, at an internal production meeting, Tom looked across the table at the familiar faces who had worked alongside him for years and confirmed what many had hoped to hear. He had no plans to retire. Not now. Not yet. He would continue as lead contractor and technical consultant for upcoming seasons, with major projects already lined up in Westford and Ridgewood. The grief had shaken him, but it hadn't broken him. Tom's legacy, however, extends far beyond television. His mentorship has become a cornerstone of how he pays it forward. In 2016, he began working closely with his nephew, Charlie Silva, who is now the president of Silva Brothers Construction, investing time, energy, and wisdom to ensure Charlie was not only equipped but confident to lead. But Tom's guidance doesn't stop at family. He has been equally intentional about mentoring professionals across multiple trades, from finishing painters to landscape designers to electrical specialists, always ensuring that each person feels like an essential piece of the puzzle. For Tom, craftsmanship has never been a solo sport. It is a relay, and someone has to be willing to pass the baton. That mindset led him to a broader mission, advocating for vocational training. His involvement with Generation Next, launched in 2016, aims to tackle America's ongoing shortage of skilled labor by encouraging young people to pursue careers in the trades. As an ambassador for the program, Tom doesn't just show up for photo opportunities. He sits on technical advisory boards, speaks at industry panels, and stands alongside advocates like Mike Rowe to raise awareness and support. Together, they have helped secure scholarships and funding, including a generous $25,000 donation from Irwin to support the Home Builders Institute. Tom doesn't just want young people to dream. He wants them to build those dreams with their own two hands. At 77, Tom Silva continues to show up every day with the same quiet determination that has defined him for decades. He navigates the fine line between tradition and innovation with characteristic thoughtfulness, sticking with time-tested techniques while embracing technology where it genuinely improves the work. His philosophy is simple. Progress should come in steady, measured steps, not flashy leaps. In a world obsessed with shortcuts and fast fixes, that kind of thinking feels not just refreshing, but essential. In the end, Tom Silva's story isn't really about renovations, nail guns, or wood shavings. It is about values, hard work, patience, mentorship, and an unwavering belief in the power of doing things right the first time. It is about creating something that lasts, not just in brick and mortar, but in people. Every lesson he has passed on, every young tradesperson he has encouraged, every battle he quietly fought behind the scenes to keep the show honest, all of it is part of a legacy that stretches far beyond any single project or television season. Tom Silva didn't set out to become a national icon. He just wanted to build things the right way. And in doing so, he built something far greater than any house. He built a life of purpose, and he's not done yet.